Welcome back. A survey by the Pew Research Center found a majority of Egyptians are dissatisfied with their country's direction. In fact, 54% said having a stable government is more important than democracy, while 44% said democracy remains a priority. Well, joining us now is Imam Shaker Elsayed of the al-Hijrah Mosque in Falls Church, Virginia, and from Chicago, Doctor Sahar Khamis, an assistant professor with the University of Maryland. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Well, as we just heard there from our reporter, voting has been extended to a third day. Dr. Khamis, let me start with you. The New York Times quoting an analyst as saying that these extensions to the voting days looks, quote, desperate. Does it?
Absolutely. I do agree that it's totally a desperate attempt in order to get more people to vote. And the reason why there is not a very good turnout in terms of the voting and casting of ballots in these elections is that because many Egyptians are indeed dismayed by the whole situation. They do not feel that these elections are truly transparent, they're not truly fair, they're not truly giving an opportunity for a fair election in any way, shape, or form, and they're not even optimistic about a better turn for their own country. They do know the result almost in advance. They know who's going to be the winner, and they don't feel motivated to go and cast a ballot in this round of elections. So the general atmosphere is that of dismay, this kind of despair. There's a kind of a lack of enthusiasm about taking part in the elections, and I think this whole situation creates this kind of desperate attempt to extend it for a few more days.
Right, Imam Shaker, do you share those sentiments that this election is not free and fair, people are dismayed, it's not transparent?
I believe it is not dismay. I believe it is the apathy of the coup. How could you have a military coup and then get the military leader whose hands are full of blood, Egyptian blood that is, and then he asks people to come and vote for him? It is so pathetic that this is what he expects people to do. People had several votes before. He took all of these rights away, and now he's asking, and he's not getting any response because that's what he deserves.
Dr. Khamis, let's try and put this into some kind of context here. Why is it so important that there be a high turnout for this election?
I think that the whole thing has been staged in advance. It's like a joke, really, or a farce. The whole idea is that there's no really, in my opinion, two competitors or two players. I think it is one player, and the other person is invited to the table just to give the impression that there is some kind of election in the first place. So in order to make the full play or the full joke look more realistic and more convincing to people, they're interested in having numbers of people show up at the election poll and actually, maybe pictures of people casting their ballots. But as I said in my previous comment, many Egyptians do not take this seriously because they don't feel that it's going to provide any kind of serious, positive outcome for their own country. And the whole idea of voting is to try to make a difference in the results, different in the election's outcome, and I don't think this is the way Egyptians see it right now. They know the result in advance.
Right, Imam Shaker, is that what we're seeing here? Is this election a mere formality? Is the result a foregone conclusion, the outcome all decided?
Yeah, the military appointed him as a president, and then he told him, go and run. He came to run like any candidate. People ask him, what is your agenda? What do you want to do? He says, I have nothing. I have no resources. The country is poor. Don't expect anything. So why should people be motivated to stand in line? He promises nothing but dismay. He's telling people, you better be assured that we're going to sacrifice 2 generations before the country stands on its feet. He's asking people, if you have a loaf of bread, cut it into 4 pieces before you touch it. So this is what the promises that he has. This is promises. So it is letting people know in advance to expect nothing. And then on the other hand, no demonstrations, no freedoms, no voicing of concerns, nothing. So no freedom, no bread, no dignity. Why should people stand for him?
Okay, Imam, what is going to be the consequences, or what are going to be the consequences of there being a low turnout here? Would he have serious legitimacy problems?
He has serious legitimacy problem with or without turning over. Whether people turn out in big numbers or small numbers, he has legitimacy being the coup leader. The blood of the Egyptian people on his hand is his biggest problem. The military council made their life as a mistake by letting him do the blood thing and letting him be the face of the military.
Dr. Khamis, what can you tell us about the way this election is being conducted? What role is the media in Egypt playing in this election?
I think the media has played a very important role in terms of increasing, unfortunately, the fragmentation and polarization which is already existing in the Egyptian scene. I've done a lot of research on the role of media in Egypt and the Arab world, and we all hailed the great historic revolution that took place in Egypt in 2011 and the Arab Spring that swept the region also in 2011, and the role of media, especially social media, in amplifying the voices of protest and calls for democracy, calls for reform. Now the media is playing a completely different role, unfortunately. Now with the political scene being more divided, more fragmented, and more polarized, media are adding to this kind of polarization and this kind of fragmentation. Everyone is using their own channel or their own newspaper or even their own social media platforms as weapons in order to attack their opponents and to stigmatize them and to label them and to call them bad names. So when you have some kind of united platform that people can unite around, like for example the call for Mubarak to leave office or to oust him from power, media can play a very effective role in order to amplify these voices.
Imam Shaker, there is one other candidate running in this election. He is Hamdeen Sabahi. What do we know about him, and does his participation actually add a slight element of legitimacy to the whole process?
Mr. Sabahi has been desperate to take any office. Even in this election, he says, I would accept to be a prime minister. So he wants to be anything in power. He has been desperate. Everybody knows that. He is playing a decoy candidate. He is not a serious candidate. He also did not offer a serious program, a serious critique of his opponent, like people normally do, because he's afraid he's going to lose maybe his life, maybe something even more serious, like they are holding things against him nobody knows, because they arrested his daughter on charges of theft, something like this. So you cannot expect him to be a serious candidate in this running.
Dr. Khamis, I want to get back to something you just said a moment ago, and that is talking about how the military came to power in Egypt. The democratically elected government under Mohamed Morsi, who led the Muslim Brotherhood government, was deposed in a popular uprising. Was that, in retrospect, a mistake?
It is definitely a mistake. It's a very big one because no matter what, I think that Morsi did his own share of mistakes. His rule in office was not perfect. It was not ideal. But you cannot change a country like Egypt with all its economic and political and social challenges in 1 year and just turn it around. That's not a realistic expectation whatsoever. I don't think that Morsi was given a fair chance. I don't think that he was fairly treated by any party involved, whether the media or the people themselves, or none of the organizations or bodies in the country were to his side or to his aid. They were all working against him in order to make sure that he fails. But the whole idea of deposing of a democratically elected president from office through the intervention of the military, this is a coup by all means. And this is a very big mistake because, in fact, it does derail the democratic process in the country and takes us back many, many steps behind where we need to be. And I just want to make a quick comment about something you mentioned at the beginning about the opinions of Egyptians, that more than 50% are favoring a stable government and only 30-something% are favoring democracy. I think that both of them should go hand in hand. In order to have a stable government and a stable country, you do need to have a strong and well-entrenched democratic process and a strong democracy in place, and vice versa. I do not think it's an either-or situation. I think that both of them go hand in hand, and to favor one at the expense of the other is indeed a serious issue and a big problem.
Right, those were the Pew Research figures that we were citing there. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say that Mubarak used to contrast either you have democracy, freedom, and dignity, or you have stability. And he always came to Washington and say, if I go, it will be chaotic. It's either me or chaos. So the military continues to use the same song as if the Egyptians have not learned anything through the revolution or 30 years of Mubarak's rule.
Okay, we will look at how this election is being viewed around the world in a moment, but first we're going to take a break. In a moment, we'll continue our conversation about Egypt's presidential election and the fate of the Muslim Brotherhood. Stay with us, you're on The Heat.